Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Maqbool with you at PTV WORLD. In today's show, we will be talking about two important stories. The first is with reference to the political situation of the country and, of course, what has been going on with regards to the PTI leader Imran Khan and the cases against him. There have been multiple cases now, and of course, this is with regards to the Toshakhana reference case, the prohibited funding case, and now, of course, in the recent past, in which there was controversial remarks being made by the PTI leader in a rally in F9 Park in Islamabad. There have been an anti-terrorism case as well, and also a contempt of court that was also issued earlier. We also know that now a show cause notice has also been issued to Imran Khan, and he has been asked to personally appear in court on the 31st of August. His protective bail also ends on Thursday till the 25th of August, and after then, of course, there's also talk about what is going to happen with regards to his arrest. Of course, a lot of that remains to be seen as well, but it's important, of course, here to understand the kind of consequence or the kind of course of action these particular cases is going to take, especially with regards to the contempt of court, because even if we take the anti-terrorism court aside, there seems to be something that it has a lot of value in terms of what was said and what sort of precedents exist in the past and the kind of statements that can make it as contempt of court. So we're going to obviously be taking a look at this particular case and trying to understand whether or not the controversial remarks made warrant such a case and what is going to happen. Of course, there is a show cause notice that has been given, so we are expected to see this hearing begin from the 31st of August. This is, of course, with regards to the statements that have been specifically made against the additional sessions judge, Ms. Zeba Chaudhary, who earlier approved the remand of Shahbaz Gill in a sedition case, and in reference to this, the PTI chairman had made controversial remarks in a rally. So we're going to take a look at the political future of the PTI leader and the leadership in general as well, and the way the political party's narrative and popularity is going to impact the future course of action, especially when we see there have been election victories previously in Lahore and now also in Karachi, and of course the argument of his popularity also being given in the kind of stance that the PTI leaders have with regards to their solidarity with Imran Khan. At the same time, we'll also be taking a look at the strategy that is employed by the PMLN and the government and the way they're going to be proceeding this case, what's going to happen, and the kind of political situation that's going to evolve with the Punjab government and, of course, the government at the center as well. That's going to be our first segment of the show today. Our second segment is going to focus on something which, unfortunately, in a lot of this political chaos has been stepped back and has been put at the back burner, which is unfortunate because this is an extremely unfortunate and tragic situation that Pakistan and its citizens have continued to face, specifically this entire month. And we have seen that because of heavy rain and floods, there have been at least 777 people across the country who have lost their lives over the last 2 months, with most of them happening, about 300 of them happening in the month of August alone. We also know that about 300,000 people have been displaced, about 60,000 homes have been destroyed, and more than 300,000 people are living in relief camps, with 1.8 million affected by these flash floods, with more rains and more floods expected in the coming days as well, according to the forecasts. And this is, of course, going to be a very difficult situation to an already difficult situation, where we see that even though rescue efforts are underway, there's a lot of difficulty in reaching far-flung areas that have been hit by the flood and to get access to people who are in dire need of our help. So we're going to be taking a look at this particular situation, what needs to be done about it, and how there needs to be a political focus on this as well. We have seen the Prime Minister talking about expediting this process and making sure that all the agencies and all the institutions are involved in helping the people and in rescue and relief efforts. But of course, this is something that we're dealing with on a national scale, and we'll have to see what sort of measures are going to be taken in the future as well, and what sort of action needs to be taken in terms of this happening almost every year. And now, of course, we've seen record rains, and how we are going to be prepared in the future for such incidents. So that's going to be our second segment of the show today. For this and more, of course, as usual in the studios, I've been joined by Farrukh Pitafi, and for our first segment regarding the political situation and particularly the show cause notice against the PTI leader Imran Khan, we have been joined by Mr. Ahmed Jawad, who's a focal person to the Prime Minister on digital Digital Media Technologies. We've also been joined by Mr. Abdul Moiz Jafri, who's a political analyst. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being a part of the show and being with us in the debate. I'll start with you, Mr. Ahmed Jawad. When we look at the situation currently right now, of course, there have been many cases against Imran Khan at the moment, and there's been a lot of talk with regards to the government and the PDM and the kind of statements that have been coming out demanding or talking about how all of this warrants his disqualification as well, and how he has been repeatedly making these controversial remarks against different institutions, including the judiciary and the ECP as well. In this particular case, when we talk about what happened in the rally in F9 Park and the statements that have been made, particularly against the additional sessions judge, Ms. Zeba Chaudhry, what do you think in terms of the kind of legal course of action that this case is going to eventually take is going to be the outcome of the show cause notice of the contempt of court proceedings? Of course, we also know that there is an anti-terrorism case against him as well, but it seems that perhaps the contempt of court case is a strong one, and that we're going to be seeing some sort of consequence legally for the PTI leadership, especially with the kind of reports that have been coming in, the way that the case is now proceeding.
Sana, I think I would start with the statement of Imran Khan, which he repeats, which he has repeated on so many forums in past many years, that the law for the powerful and weak should be the same. So, in my opinion, whatever the case is, Imran Khan is facing, top of the line, of course, is contempt of the court, which is, I think, in my recent memory, I have not seen anything like this, that a chairman of the party, a former prime minister, he comes in a public forum addressing through a national broadcasting, television, and threatening the civil bureaucracy and threatening a judge by with her name and threatening her with actions. So in very clear words, it has never been seen before that you are threatening even now the judges. Yes, you can criticize decisions of the courts. Yes, you can criticize the decision of bureaucracy, or you can even criticize their conduct. But threatening in such a manner, I think this is something quite unprecedented. But at the same time, it's a continuity of the aggressive and fascist attitude of Imran Khan since long time. And he is repeating a similar conduct and attitude. And it was all started, if you can recall, 2014 Dharna. And today, this question is coming into the mind of people, that how come if a Prime Minister Yusuf Raza Gilani or PMLN leader Nihal Hashmi or Talal Chaudhry or Danial Aziz, all these people could be tried in a court for the contempt of court, and they were even punished for that. How come Imran Khan, what is so special about Imran Khan that the law is helpless in front of him, and every time he gets gets away from here?
Right. Mr. Moiz, we of course keep hearing this, that what's so special about the PTI leader Imran Khan, and I want to understand whether or not there has been in fact any special treatment given, especially in terms of the legal proceedings and court cases, because we keep hearing this, but has that actually happened, and what sort of examples exist in the past? And then when we talk about this particular case of contempt of court, do you think that this is simply something that the PTI leadership can navigate through by an apology, and whether or not that is an option for the PTI leader?
Thank you for this opportunity. Firstly, I think to address the issue of him being treated favorably, I think with regards to the anti-terrorism case against Imran Khan and the PTV World, your channel, the storming of the gates when him and his cousins in Tahir ul Qadri's PAT attempted to overthrow this government under whatever direction was prevalent at the time. I think the way he was treated thereafter would perhaps be an example of special treatment, but it wouldn't be special just for Imran Khan. Many people who have come into power after being framed for or being charged with the notice of a crime when out of power have seen those cases disappear. As far as this contempt is concerned, I think it is a rather serious matter because this additional session judge, being a woman and being attacked in this way by Imran Khan, is clearly an issue that the Islamabad High Court or any High Court would not let go lightly, because it would be the thin end of the wedge. It would mean that the rule of law would be thrown to the wind if this did not go addressed. So I welcome the fact that it has been addressed in the sense that a show cause notice, prima facie, alleging that this was contemptuous to bring a judge into such blame.
Right. So are you saying that even
so
if there is an apology, there is no option of this case being let go, even in the case of an apology?
Oh, no, of course. An answer to judicial contempt is always by way of unconditional apology. And I think if Imran Khan does tender that unconditional apology, then the court ought to let it be and move on. Because if this court tries to go further and convict Imran Khan on this premise, on the premise of having conducted the contempt, I don't think this will add any majesty to the court. I think it will take away from it, considering the political situation and scenario.
Right.
I think Imran Khan has clearly made a mistake.
Allow me to ask a follow-up question.
Right.
Moise, let us broaden the scope of discussion. Let me ask you about the fact that you pointed out, although we are talking about a contempt of court case, but you also mentioned the gender of the honorable judge, and you also mentioned that how it becomes a soft target. When you look at the populist movements all over the world, it seems that they usually go after the softest targets. Do you have any explanation why Imran Khan might have chosen these soft targets to go after? Moise,
can you hear us? Unfortunately, I think there's an issue and we are not able to connect with our guests. But we'll come back to that question. But Farrukh, my question to you was, when we talk about, of course, the way that the legal action will be taken or how the cases are going to proceed, that's one thing, of course. But another is how the PTI leadership or particularly Imran Khan wishes to proceed, or what the thought process is, or how they are going to develop a strategy in terms of moving forward. Do you think that is an option, or is a way forward that they're looking at in terms of actually talking about an apology, or talking about the way that the rule of law is going to eventually proceed and actually appearing in cases and then also submitting to these state institutions?
I think that last we spoke, since then they have started appearing in the courts and they have started engaging the institutions, right? Including, by the way, ECP as well. And it was important because today they might think that they are buoyed by this narrative of theirs and populism, but tomorrow it can come back to actually haunt them, right? So it was important for them to actually go and start engaging with the institutions. That is a very important thing. That said, the problem is I don't see any workaround, or any solution around this question of apology. Whether Imran Khan is going to do it personally, I don't think that he is, usually he never actually apologizes for anything that he does. But perhaps his lawyers can actually submit a formal apology that is a text written and signed by the accused, right? And that is necessary, because otherwise then you are opening yourself for direct contempt charges and then of course conviction as well. But whether it is going to happen, whether he is going to be convicted, I think that there is this impression that if he tenders an apology and that is thought to be true, then the matter will let go. Otherwise, there is this impression or this fear that if you try to disqualify him or actually send him to jail, then people might actually misconstrue it as a cop-out. Some kind of attempt to actually technically knock him out of the process. because they are really intimidated by the overwhelming support. I don't think that overwhelming support is there. Media has its own biases and its own, actually screwed up priorities.
Right.
Otherwise, usually when you look at the circumstances in every election, other parties also got votes, even though they were contesting seats which were vacated by PTI.
Right.
So I don't think there is any need to be intimidated, and I don't think there is any need to technically knock the man out.
All right. I know that Mr. Moise has to leave at 10:30, so we'll just ask our last question of Mr. Moise. And Farrukh, if you could be kind enough to repeat the one you asked earlier, so that Mr. Moise can answer that.
Yeah, Moise, I was actually listening to your response earlier, and you were talking about contempt of court, but you also brought up the matter of the gender of honorable judge. So I wanted to, I realized that she becomes, because this society is such, that she becomes a soft target, and judges are thought to be soft targets as well. Wherever we look, India, US, Europe, the populist leaders usually attack soft targets. Do you think that there is some kind of resonance? And can you actually unpack this, why Imran Khan might be actually going after people, soft targets by name, so to speak?
And if you could also help us understand whether or not the case is going to be looked at differently because a different gender is involved. Would it be the same way that this case is going to proceed, or the gravity would be the same if this was a sessions judge man?
I think the gravity should be different because it's a woman. We are a deeply patriarchal profession in any case. It is a deeply patriarchal job. As a judge, there are very few women around. There should be many more. There are very few women lawyers around. There should be many more. There is almost a non-existent female ratio in court staff, which can be fixed in a day.
Right, but legally in contempt of court, how much does a gender factor in?
Yeah.
It does not, because the contempt is of the judge. The judge happens to be a woman, but the fact that Imran Khan said these things about a woman makes it even more serious, especially given the circumstances that I had stated. And I think that is why it is very important for the courts to put their foot down and at least get him to give an apology. I think he made a mistake. I think he was in the heat of the moment. I think he's going after soft targets because they are soft targets. I think the harder targets make life quite miserable, as we've seen for some of his associates, which is why he's going after the softer ones. I just think this wasn't a soft target. I think it was an unfair target, because what would you get out of doing that other than trying to unite the entirety of the subordinate judiciary against you, which you have to go and face now? I don't see the merit of what he said. I see the merit in what Imran Khan has been doing otherwise. I think strategically he's done really well to galvanize support around what is basically a misstatement, to galvanize and lose the weight of incumbency from his shoulders of 3.5 years of weak government and transfer it completely onto the shoulders of this current dispensation. I think that has been entirely through a narrative where he has peddled a line repeatedly, and I think he's made very effective use of his narrative. I just think over here he overstepped the mark and he must apologize, and I think the courts he will obviously throw himself at the mercy of the court. He's done this before once when he said Iftikhar Chaudhry's decision was shameful or the role of the judiciary was shameful, and therereafter he apologized. I think this will happen again.
And that's a very good point, Moise, when you were saying that when it comes to law, it does not discriminate in terms of gender. But shouldn't there be a law actually to ensure, especially to protect women judges or justices in the future? Because it seems
there should be a law to Pitafi Sahab, that's something that Ahmed Jawad Sahab will obviously represent, who is representing the Treasury here. He should answer. There should be a law to have higher female staff ratios in courts. There should be a law to have not just family courts manned by women, but all courts should be led by women. There should be a law to have a minimum ratio of women judges to the High Court, a minimum ratio of enrollment to the bar, a minimum ratio in the Supreme Court. But these are laws, and it's up to the government to make them. Thank you very much for
thank you very much.
Platform.
I understand that you have today. Thank you very much, Mr. Abdul Moise, for joining us and being a part of the debate. And I'll just like to also add that it's not just perhaps the courts. We'd like to see those laws and those ratios also being regulated and standardized in different places, and of course in all sectors of life as well. And Mr. Jawad, when we talk about, of course, this particular issue in terms of how the PTI leadership is now going to proceed, or the kind of impact it has, of course, we've seen in the past that the PTI leader is not one to apologize. But when we look at this particular case, would it not be something that would benefit his party or his popularity or his ability to succeed in future elections? And whether or not that will be a consideration, or do you think that the impact of seeing Mr. Imran Khan actually succumbing or following the institutions he has been criticizing in the past lead to perhaps losing out on the popularity that he earlier has?
So now, first of all, I would like to make few comments about the conversation which was going on.
Sure.
First of all, when a case is sub judice in the court and the decision rests with the court, with the judges who are overseeing this case, we should not be talking about the outcome of the case. For example, saying that, making a statement that if Imran Khan tenders his apology, then there is no point of giving him any punishment and he should be forgiven. Or the second statement that he should be forgiven because he has a very popular support in the public. I think we must see the law beyond the context of politics, beyond the context of somebody's popular or less popular, somebody's more strong or somebody's weaker. The law should be seen on merit. And if I recall, Imran Khan has a past history when he can even tenders apology to get out of the heat. And if I can recall correctly, 32 puncture case where he has alleged Najam Sethi for this. So he was called in the court and he tendered apology. And he said that he said it in a political, that, and he has no evidence. So he apologized and he could survive from that case. So that is also one history. On the other hand, if I also recall correctly, Yusuf Reza Gilani, who was the prime minister at that time, he also tendered apology, but he was also convicted, even for, I think, for a few minutes, I think he was convicted, but as a consequent, he was disqualified for 5 years. So, in my opinion, first of all, the courts, they are, I think, already formulating a larger bench. They should decide, but once we are talking in the media, perhaps we can talk about on the merit of law. If within law, it is written somewhere that if somebody tenders an apology after making serious contempt of court and he should be forgiven, then of course we can talk about it. But if this is just an option with the judges, I think we should not talk about this thing. We should wait for the decision.
Jawad Sahab, I'm glad that you actually brought up the matter of it being sub judice. Nobody is actually implying that this ought to be done or that ought to be done. We were just merely, when talking to Moise, we were just weighing what kind of impact any decision could have. But regardless, there was something that was, he said that we should put that question to you, and that was the case about women presence in the benches, and also how laws should be. There should be some kind of affirmative action to defend them, especially if somebody is deemed a soft target and they're attacked by a populist leader. Do you think that your party and the ruling coalition can come up with laws to actually ensure that if the victim of or the person at the receiving end of contempt is basically a softer target, the punishment should be harsher?
I would say, Pitafi, that this is the question which you have asked is, yes, it looks fair on merit that there should be more opportunities for the women in the judiciary or overall in every field, and there should be protection for the women. They should not be considered as soft targets. But I think there are laws already for the protection of the women, whether it is the working place, whether it is in a decision-making place. The laws are already there, and all we need to do is to implement them. For example, this incident has happened So the way Islamabad High Court has responded to this, I think this is quite encouraging. And as a citizen, I think not as a representative of the government or representative of opposition. I mean, this should be seen as something on merit that
Absolutely.
nobody should be allowed. Nobody should be
Absolutely, Ahmad
allowed
Jawad Sahab,
to
but
threaten
let
judges.
me qualify how this honorable judge was actually deemed a softer target. When Imran Khan Sahab was talking about other, stronger targets, he was actually referring to them as Mr. X, Mr. Y, or then the neutrals. But when it came to this judge, he actually took her name and in a very bad manner. So you agree with this point that there was a kind of discrimination, particularly because perhaps of the gender of the honorable judge, and that's why there should be some focus on that matter as well.
Farrukh, I would say it's a very intelligent observation from your side. You have compared things very clearly, and I have taken note of this thing. The way you have seen the things, I fully agree with that. That he has been using, different names for the
Insinuations.
powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, when it is about a woman judge, then he has the that courage to call her name and threaten her. I think this is something a very clear contrast of hard targets, strong targets, and soft targets. Yes,
Right,
she has been
absolutely.
taken as a soft target.
Absolutely, and we hope we see some change in terms of the way that such language is used by not just political leaders but everybody else as well. Mr. Jawad, when we talk about the anti-terrorism case as well, which is also another one that is filed against Imran Khan, there's also, of course, the protective bail that he has till Thursday. And there has been talk regarding whether or not there is going to be an arrest after this particular date passes. What do you think is going to be the future course of action, and what sort of a strategy or plan ahead is there in terms of what the government or what the PDM is planning to do in terms of how this is going to proceed? How is this particular case going to be taken forward, whether or not there's a possibility of an extension of the bail, whether or not we'll see the BTI leader actually appearing in court before that?
Sana, despite the fact that government representative and government officials and the allied parties also, their leadership, they are all discussing about this special treatment which Imran Khan has been enjoying for a very, very long time. I mean, the things which he say, he can get away, but others may not. And this time, the government is very clear about this thing. But at the same time, the government has absolutely no intention of victimizing, political victimization. They will not opt for the political victimization. They would like to go with the merit of law. And whether it is anti-terrorist case, whether it is contempt of
Right, but Jawad
court
Sahab, I want to
case,
understand whether or not there will be an arrest post 25th of August if there's no extension in bail.
uh, within the law, yes, why not?
All right. All right. We have only time now to move on to our next segment, but thank you very much for staying with us. And but please also stay with us in the next segment as well. And we will be talking about, of course, another very important situation, which is regarding floods and rain, in which a large number of people have already lost their lives. There have been many that have been displaced. Thousands of homes have been destroyed, and about 1.8 million affected already. And we, of course, have more rain forecasts in the future as well. Mr. Jawad, when we look at this particular situation, of course, it's indeed very unfortunate that we have seen such a tragedy happening in various parts of Balochistan and Sindh. And we have also seen that this is something that we are faced with almost every year. Of course, there has been record rainfalls this time around, but in case of these floods, we've seen the situation deteriorate and get worse over the years. However, we see that at the end of the day, there is always a lot of suffering, always a lot of loss of lives, a lot of loss of property, and a lot of measures taken in the aftermath of such a tragedy. How do you think that in this particular way that we're dealing with this situation at the moment can then be translated also as a preventive measure in the future as well? And what sort of actions do you think can be taken right now, also considering the fact that we have more rain expected in the coming days?
Sarah, if I go back and try to recall in my lifetime the number of floods which I have seen, I think I was perhaps 7, 8 years old in early 70s. I don't remember the exact year when the country faced one of the worst floods. And since then, throughout my life, uh, almost every second or third years, we see some of the worst floods
Right.
consequences. We see the impact on the people, and this is not something new. And the solution also is very well known to different government regimes. It is about building dams. It is about environment. It is about making, I mean, rivers and canals and all these water streams. They need to be they need to be made into the right use of water instead of wasting this water
Right,
into
but
the seas
these are
every
still
year.
huge tasks and huge challenges. And of course, even though we've been faced with this over the years, we still haven't seen much progress, unfortunately. Of course, there's a lot of reasons and factors regarding why that hasn't happened. But when we talk about the issues of climate change and global warming, of course, there's also the natural aspect to it that we are dealing with. How much do you think can actually be curtailed with such measures? And then when we talk about such measures, are we even proceeding towards making them into a reality? Because they require a lot of time and a lot of will and efforts coming in from our political leadership as well. But right now, as you can also see, we're still in a political chaos, and at the same time, our people are suffering.
I think for the time being, the government focus is on the flood relief because this is at the moment the most important thing for the government. The situation is extremely bad, and Prime Minister in Qatar just a few hours held this very high-level meeting,
Right.
participated by all the ministries and donors conference and other mayors and actions. They were discussed. But what you are talking about is, Sana, it has to be a consistent policy. It is not just matter of a 10th-month policy for this government before the new election. It has to be a consistent policy which needs to be followed by every government today or tomorrow.
Hmm. Absolutely. Farrukh, when we talk about these challenges, of course, this is something that we have been faced with in the past as well. And there have been a lot of measures taken even now. However, when we see the way that these rescue efforts are underway at the moment as well, there's a lot of issues with regards to access to areas in which these efforts have difficulty to reach, and of course, to help the people as well. Even when there is not a flood-like situation in the country, of course, there are measures that can be taken or need to be taken with regards to the prosperity of the provinces such as Balochistan and Sindh. Is there any progress that you've seen over the years taken in terms of the political development or the structural development of these provinces?
Not really, Sana. One aspect, very important aspect, is the drainage system, which is archaic, right? If you had kept on updating it, we never would have heard that Karachi had flood-like situation. We would have never heard that, even in Lahore, where I used to work 7, 8 years ago, I remember that the office where I used to go to actually would, resemble a swimming pool because of the rains that if there was intense rain, it would become some kind of a swimming pool. But remember, there are other distortions that have cropped up, and we have to talk about that as well. For example, yesterday when we were talking about Imran Khan Sahab, previous week, I was thinking, because being a journalist, I'm also a citizen, and I keep on watching television, and the fact that only a couple of days ago I got a telephone call that now my own village, ancestral village, is also submerged. It is underwater, including my father's grave. My father now, actually, to quote Hollywood, sleeps with the fish. But at this moment, the kind of displacement that is taking place, it reminds me of 2010, when actually, you have witness to the urban poverty, and we keep on talking about it. The rural poverty is usually hidden from our eyes because your media keeps on obsessing about some Shahbaz Gill or somebody else rather than 777 people who have died in past 2 days. One man is more valuable than almost 1,000 people. So you can see the basic exchange rate here. But with that kind of a situation of obsession, media doesn't focus on the villages. And whenever floods come, these people or this poverty actually is brought to the mainstream because people then have to be displaced and they end up on the main roads, right? And then we look at it and we gawk at the state of affairs. At this moment also, I think that wherever we had the canal system, particularly in Punjab or some parts of other parts of the country, there you have a effective drainage system. But elsewhere, in southern Punjab for that matter, people are sitting next to the river, and whenever there's flood, there's no way to actually ensure that there won't be alluvial cutting and that they won't actually lose their land totally. And similarly in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa's part, particularly southern part, Balochistan as well, this time we have seen humongous loss, and we have been talking about that as well. Unfortunately, our media has not. And then Sindh, as you very correctly pointed out, in that state of affairs, our media's role becomes that of a distortion because we have to actually obsess about the circus in town rather than the state of affairs of the very vulnerable members of our country. Because of that, I think the way Western media is being rejected by Western people because they don't actually focus on their matters, I think our media is totally going to be punished by the viewers and they will end up with 0 rating. At this moment, it is sad, I tell you, that politically there have been instability. Because of that, we haven't been able to update the system where we can take care of drainage and all. Then the media is also not doing its job. And then bureaucracy's capacity also keep on declining because the number of people is increasing. So because of that, the situation is really sad. And sadly, 50 channels in this country all are obsessing about one man's shave and his comfort.
Absolutely. Mr. Jawad, when we talk about this, do you think it's a matter of not having this as a priority in terms of how political leaders in the past have taken a look at such situations and how perhaps the political games also come to the forefront, and then of course the way that it's also projected, or the fact that this is a population that is largely rural or largely poor that is being affected, because of course at the end of the day we've seen that the suffering actually continues and it piles on itself. When we talk about these floods, of course, these people have lost their houses, they've lost their family, their children, and then they are dealing with waterborne diseases, they're dealing with issues of lack of supplies, they're dealing with not enough money. And so the problems keep on rising, and the problems last far longer after the rains have stopped. And I don't think we take a look at how exactly measures need to be taken in terms of the aftermath of such tragedy, or how long a person is still a victim of these floods. What really do you think is the issue here? Is it not a priority? Is it just not in front of our eyes enough? Is it not close to home enough? What exactly is the problem?
I think, Sana, partially your question has already been answered by Farrukh. That the priority, whether it is about media or whether it is about the government, it's mostly firefighting. And the reason is, if you even look at this present government, I mean, the government has taken over in a situation where the foreign reserves are left for a few months import bill, where the trade deficit account has crossed $50 billion, where current account deficit has crossed $18 billion, where dollar has gone from 125 to 190 rupees, and where we are facing many other economic challenges. Now, imagine for any government in this situation, for the past 4 months, I think the most important thing, the priority for the government is to revive the economy, to prevent the country going into bankruptcy. I mean, and after 4 months, now they are able to having that oxygen, where we are having IMF bailout package, we are having investment from Qatar, we are having some extension of the funds which were given from Saudi Arabia. We are having similar extension from China, and our trade deficit account is now slightly improving, and
Right. And
dollar
I understand that,
is
Mr.
being
Jawad, but how
controlled.
long till that actually trickles down to these people, trickles down to the poor, trickles down to the people who are suffering from floods right now?
I mean, the government is, this is the top priority at the moment for the government. Like I told you, that even
Okay.
before going to Qatar, I mean, the most important meeting for him before leaving was about the flood relief and flood rescue and helping the people, their rehabilitation. And for the same reason, this donor conference and many other actions are being taken. So this is the most important thing. But your question, that what is the comprehensive long-term policy which can control this menace of floods after every second, third year, and which is resulting into billions of loss which the country is facing, and at the same time the suffering of the people, and especially the rural areas, like Farrukh has mentioned about his village. I'm also getting informations from so many people that my village is no more visible. I mean, it is under the water. So these are the situation in Balochistan or in Sindh. So this is unfortunate, but this is like I told you that 50 years ago, I mean, as a child, I have seen this thing. What I'm seeing today in 2022, this I have seen as a child, probably worse than this. And today we are just repeating the history, and we are seeing the suffering of the people. But these are few things which I think, irrespective of the politics, the different governments, they need to have a continuity of these policies. And when this
Right.
happens, like Farrukh said, that media or the public or the political parties should not be talking about Shahbaz Gill. They should have been talking about this flood relief and rescue. Imran Khan, as a leader of opposition, as a one big party of this country, he should have been talking about flood. He should have said that for 1 month, till the time every people, every person who is suffering from the flood is settled down, I will not talk about anything. I would like to work with the government, and the government and opposition, everybody should have joined hands in this relief work. But imagine, Farrukh has very rightly pointed out, this is what I have been saying in last few days. Imagine what is the focus and the main discussion and the main debate of this country, of this society. It is on the media or on the social media, what Shahbaz
Absolutely.
Gill is
Yes.
eating and what he's doing. And on the other hand, a very large population of the country, the poor population of the country, they are going through worse conditions. And it's about basic living needs.
Right, and of course, it's extremely important for us to be able to focus that. And like you said, what should have happened, it seems too good to be true. But of course, that is the need of the hour, and we hope that we can see such leadership coming through and such importance given to the people who actually need it right now. But thank you very much, Mr. Ahmed Jawad, for being with us and being a part of the debate. And we can only hope that the suffering of the people with regards to rain and floods does not continue. Of course, the forecast does say that there is going to be more rain coming soon, but we hope we can do as much as we can to help them and to prevent this from happening again. That's all from the debate. See you tomorrow.